In today's gaming landscape, there's a widening gap between massive, risk-averse blockbusters and scrappy indie developers swinging for the fences with niche innovations. Somewhere in the middle is a space that should be perfect for experimentation, but the reality is often messier. Games with bold ideas and modest budgets rarely get the time or resources to match their ambition. And without that polish, those ideas often struggle to take shape. And that brings us to Atomfall, a game that lives firmly in this experimental but unpolished middle ground. Atomfall is an open-world, first-person survival shooter with light RPG elements, developed by Rebellion. Set in the British countryside during the 1960s, the game places you inside a quarantine zone created after the mysterious meltdown of a nearby power plant. While the outside world remains intact, this isolated region has started to unravel, with strange threats, eerie plant life, and rumors of something far worse lurking beneath the surface. From there, you're left to uncover the truth, fend off hostiles, and ultimately find a way to escape. Right off the bat, a couple things stand out compared to similar titles. First, in most apocalyptic survival scenarios, you would expect bleak environments, corpses in the street, and this sense of existential dread. But in Atomfall, you step out of the bunker and everything's kinda nice. The British countryside is still beautiful, the culture is mostly intact, and people are just doing their best to get by. Second, the game really wants you to slowly uncover the truth for yourself. That means reading scattered notes, interrogating locals, and piecing together the bigger picture without much hand-holding. No glowing objectives or waypoint trails here. It gives Atomfall a more investigative and almost hardcore tone. On paper, that's a cool idea. Outside of those two unique angles, Atomfall mostly follows the familiar playbook of first-person survival shooters, but unfortunately, a bit more rough around the edges. Combat is serviceable, but far from the game's strong suit. Gunplay feels stiff, with minimal feedback on hits. Weapons have weight, but there's a sluggishness to moving and aiming that makes firefights clunky. Melee combat is a bit more interesting. Instead of blocking, parrying, or dodging, you rely on staggering enemies with a kick and then finishing them off. It's satisfying the first few times, but after running the same pattern over and over, it wears off. The enemy AI doesn't do the combat any favors. Enemies fall into predictable, clunky patterns that are often easy to exploit. They'll funnel through doorways one at a time or get stuck navigating terrain, struggling to properly engage the player. As a result, most encounters feel static, more like whittling down sluggish NPCs than facing real threats. This is especially noticeable when using the game's stealth mechanics. Enemies lose track of the player incredibly quickly, often wandering back into your line of sight one at a time for easy kills. There's even a mechanic where crouching in tall grass renders you hidden, and I was able to clear entire high-security compounds just by picking off a few guards, turning a corner, crouching in the grass, and waiting for the next poor soul to walk up and die. It turns what should be tense infiltration into a laughable loop, and it strips away any sense of danger from the world. Atomfall also features looting and survival mechanics. As you explore the world, you'll scavenge ammo, food, medical supplies, stimulants, explosives, and so on. You'll also collect a wide range of crafting materials and assemble these items yourself. On its own, the crafting system is enjoyable. You unlock new recipes, gather materials, and craft tools for whatever situation you're facing. If you're swarmed by rats, whip up a bomb that lures them in and then explodes. Walking into a room full of toxic gas, brew a supplement that grants temporary resistance. It's classic stuff, but it works. Where it starts to fall apart is in the resource economy. Raw materials like cloth, alcohol, and spare parts are everywhere. And because of the inventory limit, I often found myself bulk crafting random gear just to free up space, dumping the excess into my pneumatic storage container. The urgency of survival fades quickly when you've got enough medical supplies to open up a pharmacy, and a backpack full of enough raw materials to handle just about anything the game throws at you. What starts as a survival system eventually becomes hoarding. To supplement its core systems, Atomfall also includes some light RPG elements. You're given a selection of unlockable perks that improve things like weapon handling, health, stamina, and various crafting or survival abilities. These upgrades have a light touch on gameplay, just enough to support your preferred playstyle without dramatically altering it. The system itself isn't groundbreaking, but it works. What's more interesting is how these perks are unlocked. Instead of leveling up through XP, you'll need to find training manuals hidden throughout the world to unlock new perk trees, and stimulants to earn the perk points. It's a smart idea that ties character progression directly to exploration, encouraging you to engage with the world rather than grind kills or complete arbitrary objectives. Tying progression to exploration is one of the few ways Atomfall really leans into its open world design. And that brings me to one of the game's more successful elements, its world structure. Compared to most games in this genre, Atomfall's world is surprisingly compact. It's divided into 3 regions that at first glance seem like a lot to take on, but each one can actually be crossed fairly quickly. Underground tunnels and hidden paths connect the zones, so you're rarely far from a shortcut to another area. But what really makes this work is the density. Each region is packed with meaningful content, notes, encounters, environmental storytelling, and hidden items that reward curiosity. Exploration never feels like a chore because the map is digestible, and nearly every detour offers something worthwhile, whether it's gameplay utility or a new piece of narrative context. Which brings me back to one of the more experimental ideas at play here, and the thing that initially piqued my interest in Atomfall. That's the investigative approach to narrative progression I mentioned earlier. The game tells you very little up front, and you're expected to forge your own path by piecing together scattered notes, listening to strangers, and drawing your own conclusions, with minimal map markers and very little hand-holding. It's a compelling concept, but after playing it through, it didn't land the way I had hoped. At first glance, Atomfall presents itself as something refreshingly hands-off. There's a kind of hardcore energy in the way it withholds guidance. Most modern games wrap the player in safeguards, constantly pointing them towards the next objective to make sure they never feel lost. Atomfall, by contrast, seems to trust the players to slow down, read everything, talk to everyone, and actually follow up on leads, not just chase a glowing waypoint. It feels like a bold choice, one that hints at something old school and player driven. The narrative structure reinforces this freedom. Depending on which leads you choose to follow or ignore, you can reach the end in a fraction of the time it might take someone else. One player might zero in on a single storyline and finish the game quickly, while another might explore every thread, meet every character, and take their time weighing all the possible outcomes. Atomfall appears to offer true flexibility. It doesn't just let you detour, it lets you decide. At least that's the pitch. In practice, though, the investigative system that underpins this freedom is disjointed and undercooked. What would normally be your quest log is instead a collection of leads. Whenever you find a new note or talk to someone about a relevant topic, it either opens a new lead chain or adds information to an existing one. Each lead is presented in a chronological sequence, so the more you uncover, the more complete the narrative becomes. But here's the catch. You don't necessarily find these pieces in order. Depending on where you go or what you stumble into, you might discover the very last clue in a chain before ever seeing the beginning. One lead often points you towards the next, rather than requiring you to gather everything and piece it together on your own. The problem is that these leads, both in the main story and side content, don't always build towards meaningful or emotionally resonant moments. Since clues can be discovered in any order, it's entirely possible to uncover the conclusion of a lead before you even know who the people involved are or what's at stake. That means you'll sometimes be asked to make impactful decisions without the necessary context, which dulls the emotional impact. And even after you've wrapped up a lead, you'll still stumble across earlier notes hours later. Notes that would have made the moment more powerful had you found them first. These are then auto-resolved and filed away. This turns what should be a satisfying breadcrumb trail into a random sequence of events. And that chips away at the excitement of discovery. What's worse still is the game places so many narrative failsafes in your path that discovery rarely feels as personal as the game wants you to believe. You don't so much find key characters as you're inevitably delivered to them, no matter which direction you take. What's interesting is that you don't actually need to meet all of these characters to complete the game. Atomfall is designed to let players follow whichever leads they choose. That's what makes the excessive nudging feel out of place. In one case, I was led to a character through 4 different sources, even after I'd already met and advanced their storyline. This constant overcorrection exposes a deeper issue. Atomfall is a game that promises mystery. An unguided journey where curiosity and observation are meant to drive the story forward. But mystery in games isn't just about turning off quest markers or scattering breadcrumbs. True mystery comes from letting players feel curious, and when they find something, it's because they were paying attention, not because the game wouldn't let them miss it. That's where Atomfall stumbles. It doesn't create a web of intrigue. It just feeds you every thread over and over again until the sense of discovery gets replaced by a checklist. The best mysteries in games don't beg to be solved. They wait to be noticed. Maybe you passed a strange landmark hours ago that only makes sense now, or found a half-told story that clicks into place later. Not because the game forced you to revisit it, but because you remembered it. That's when discovery becomes rewarding. That's when it feels earned. Atomfall, by contrast, wants to appear mysterious and open-ended, but doesn't fully trust its players to engage with that mystery on their own. Instead of letting you carve your own path, it overloads you with every possible route, just in case you missed one. And when all perspectives are handed to you in abundance, the sense of uncovering something hidden disappears. The premise suggests a branching, investigative experience, but the design leans more towards a traditional choose-your-side structure, whether that was the intention or not. When it comes to the overall story, the setting is what stands out the most. The British countryside is still beautiful, but there's an unsettling, apocalyptic secret humming just beneath the surface. And I really like that. The central mystery, a power plant meltdown, strange plant life, zombie-like husks, isn't bad either. But the characters themselves are mostly flat, with motivations that feel either stereotypical or unclear. There's not much in the way of inner conflict or human depth to explore. Worst of all, your own character doesn't seem to care much about anything. The most consistent dialogue option you're given is basically, "I don't know, man, I just want to leave the quarantine zone." The setup is strong, but the follow-through never quite hits.
You have secured an atomic battery. This is good.
Now, I know I spent a lot of time pointing out this game's flaws, but to be clear, I don't hate Atomfall. I actually had a decent time unraveling its central mystery, and if you enjoy games of a similar genre, there's a good chance you'll find something to like here. What I really respect is the ambition. Rebellion took some bold swings with this one. An open world game with minimal map markers, a branching narrative built around player choice, and a tone that leans into quiet curiosity over constant action. That's rare. And while the execution often stumbles, whether it's the clunky combat, scattered storytelling, or a mystery that feels more guided than discovered, the core ideas are still worth exploring. Atomfall isn't a breakout hit, but it's reaching for something that matters. And if someone can learn from it, refine it, and fully commit to the trust it almost gives its players, that next version might be something special. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to support the channel. And until next time, cheers.